Fit FM is owned and operated by Communistation Company Limited, located in Stuart Castle, Duncan's Trelawney, Jamaica. We broadcast on FM 96.7 locally and is heard worldwide on fitfmja.com. Our mission is to amplify diverse voices and opinions, inform, educate, entertain, and engage listeners of all ages and lifestyle while promoting responsible community development. Fit FM 96.7, your life, your music.
Cultural Mix, an exciting radio show identifying and showcasing cultural diversity across the world through music, interviews, and lively discussions. Join Bev Moonchild on Fit FM 96.7, Fridays 6 to 8 p.m. Cultural Mix, everything cultural. Tune in. Fit FM 96.7, your life, your music.
You've got to give this. I'm standing 10 feet tall. Know yourself, know your roots, know your culture. You're in tune to Cultural Mix with Bev Moonchild and Fit FM 96.7. Fridays, 6 to 8 p.m. Imara said that. Never let it make you wear a frown. Well, you have only one life to live. So your best shot, you've got to give this. I'm standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 feet tall. I'm standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 above them all. Well, things may not be like you want them to be, yes, so be wise, you got to tread carefully. Well, there may be obstacles in your way. Just remember, Rome wasn't built in one day. I'm standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 feet tall. I'm standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 above them all. You keep your sanity, yes, facing all kind of constraints every day. In this life, your dues you've got to pay. Yes, I'm standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 feet tall. Well, I'm standing 10 feet tall, standing 10 feet tall,
Standing 10 above them all. You see? I was on point this evening, folks. It is so nice to be here. It is Friday. It is Friday. It is Friday. It is Friday. The week just done so quickly. Just you would say a minute ago it was Monday morning. I know it is Friday, heading into a weekend. But I'm happy to be here, and I am really ready for this cultural mix this evening. Lots to share, lots to hear, and lots of questions from a number of persons. We want to say Akwaba to those who have joined already, and to those who will join later, we say the very same Akwaba. I'm Bev Moonchild, your host, and we are, as usual, in the studio of Fit FM 96.7, your life, your music. And we know that you are interested in what we have to talk about this evening on Cultural Mix. We want to just talk a few things that would have happened in the week before we begin the program. And What were the exciting things? Because Jamaica always have things that go on. Jamaica always have things that go on. So we are trying to recall what would have happened, what series would have happened in the week gone. But if we don't remember, I saw it go. If you remember an interesting series that happened during the week, you can shout it out to us. But we really want to welcome everyone, wherever you're joining us from. If you're joining us from the parish of Trelawney, we welcome you. If you are in the parish of St. James, we welcome you. St. Mary, we welcome you. St. Elizabeth, we welcome you. We welcome everyone. St. Anne, Brownstone. If you are joining from any of those areas, we welcome you. If you are joining us on Facebook Live, we welcome you. YouTube, we welcome you. If you're on fitfmja.com, we welcome you. We say welcome one, welcome all. You are really, really tuned in to Cultural Mix. And this evening, we say share the program with a friend or with friends. Just keep sharing. Share it in your groups and so on. It is interesting that it is important rather, that people join us this evening to hear what our guest really, what he has to say. We will be talking, as the flyer that I sent out earlier, we'll be talking to Chief Semako. First, Chief Semako the First, President of the United Kingdoms of Africa. Have you ever heard of the United Kingdoms of Africa? The United Kingdoms of Africa. It is interesting. We are living in interesting times, folks, and we just want to be patient. Be patient, and listen to the things and watch the things as they unfold. Will they unfold in our interest? Will they unfold against us? We don't know. Let us open our eyes, though, as we watch, and be vigilant as we look out and as we watch. We are in for an interesting program, and I'm going to ask that you listen to some music. We soon come back and pick up on the program for this evening. So keep sharing. We soon come back. And of course, we want to hear, yes, Empress Naftali out of South Africa, Mama Africa, because we're going to be talking about the United Kingdoms of Africa. Mama Africa from Empress Naftali.
Whoa, Mama Africa is calling. Mystery Babylon is falling. Children of Zion answering. I Selassie, I the one commanding. Mama Africa is calling. Mystery Babylon is falling. Children of Zion answering. I Selassie, I the one commanding. Standing firm in his Armageddon times. Never fret, the unjust will pay for their crimes. Ancestral greatness coursing through our veins. How mighty it is when Jah takes the reins. The separation implemented on the roots of humanity. We'll be champions after enduring the brutality. Propagating slavery. Even in this time of maternity, Mama Africa is calling. Mystery Babylon is falling. Children of Zion answering. Haile Selassie, I the one commanding. Mama Africa is calling. Mystery Babylon is falling. Children of Zion answering. Haile Selassie, I the one commanding. We remember who we are when we let go of who it is we were taught to be. By those who never really want our innate power to reign freely. Shine your light, shine it bright. Children of the Most High is our purest delight. Go through him, the shackles that have been imposed will be broken when Babylon is deposed. Mama Africa is calling. Mystery Babylon is falling. Children of Zion answering. Haile Selassie, I the one commanding. Mama Africa is calling. Mystery Babylon is falling. Children of Zion answering. Haile Selassie, I the one commanding. Why fuss and fight when we can love and unite? Shine ever blazing fire, ignite. keep on hailing Selassie with all our might. Mama Africa is calling, Mystery Babylon is falling, children of Zion answering, and Selassie are the one commanding. Mama Africa is calling, Mystery Babylon is falling, children of Zion answering, and Selassie are the one commanding. Mama Africa is calling, Mystery Babylon is falling, children of Zion answering, and Selassie are the one commanding. Mama Africa
Africa is calling. Mystery Babylon falling. Master Babylon falling, and we are calling. Yes. You wonder how me I sing so this evening? We are here, folks. Welcome back. Well, we're not letting no bird this evening. Welcome back, folks. Welcome. Welcome back to Cultural Mix. We are here in the studio of Fit FM 96.7. Your life, your music. And I'm Bev Moonchild, your host. We are here this evening, and we know we are going to be having an interesting program. Interesting, yes? So if you think you have questions, if you think you want to know about the United Kingdoms of Africa, and how we fall into all of this, how the Caribbean fall into all of this, how the Americas, how we fall into all of this, well, you are going to be listening, you're going to be hearing, and you're going to understand how we fall in this, I'm not going to say matrix, how we fall in this development, right? Because it is a development. Things are happening around the world. It's an interesting time, I say, to be alive. And it's just for us to be patient, and see what is unfolding and how we can contribute to what is going to happen. Our guest this evening, as you would have seen, is Chief Semako, the first President of the United Kingdoms of Africa. He will join and he will tell us some of the revelations, some of the announcements. I have been hearing some things, and I myself have questions this evening. What has happened, what has unfolded, how it will affect us, how it will benefit us economically, what will happen to Jamaica. Will Jamaica be a state also? The United States of Jamaica? We don't know. Let us hear, let us tune in. We say share the live. And if you have questions, you can tune in, and you also can send your questions. You are those persons who are on fitfmja.com. I'm going to ask you to type your questions. We can see them. Tell us where you're joining us from also, so we can send a shout out to you. We are here, and in a little while, our guest is going to join us. So stay tuned, people. It is an interesting evening. I couldn't wait for this evening to come on Cultural Mix. Lots of things have been happening. In the past week, we have heard of the passing of the Queen of England, and people have different things to say. People feel differently. People have expressed themselves. Some people really are not into the mourning at all, and they justifiably can put forward why they're not into the mourning. I want to share something with you quickly. Today, I went to the convention center, Montego Bay Convention Center. There's an expo happening there, a ganja expo. One of the setup, however, was the reparations booth. And when I walked over to that setup area and we looked at some of the things that were on display, I saw, I think they call it a tongue, what do they call it, a tongue what? Something to keep your tongue in for you. So when that thing goes into your mouth, it comes to it presses down on your tongue, so you're not even able to swallow. It presses on your tongue, and then it the booklet at the back. There's a lock, a tongue shield. So they put the thing, it shapes like a tongue too. So it presses down on your tongue and it comes over your face now and they hook it at the back. It's like a padlock. That may be for when the enslaved people used to talk a lot. Maybe I would have had one of those. But when you look at it, people, when you say, but how can you can't talk without your tongue. You can't swallow without your tongue. So what are you left to do? Tell me. You're going to suffocate. Yeah, you can't swallow, you can't do nothing. And that would have been placed in the mouth of those enslaved Africans, I think, who really would have probably talked enough. When you look again, there was something else, ankle. They put it on your ankle. When you pick it up, the thing weighed about 25 pounds. The young lady who was explaining the display, she says about 25, 30 pounds. That would have been placed on your ankle. So when we saw those, when we usually see those pictures with a line of enslaved people and everybody have on a shackle on, it is those heads. So just imagine you walk with 25 pounds on one foot and 25 on the other and on a line up. Just imagine. Then there was this other thing now, a sharp thing, and she was explaining that you would have pounded that down into the ground and attached now the handcuffs to it. So them just make sure it is well grounded, put on the handcuffs, and you just dead it out in the sun till you're dead or something. And I'm looking at those things, and just by looking at some of those things, me just start feel one way. Me just feel one way, and me say, what about the people who travel into Africa and they go to the building or to the house of where they call the door of no return? And when they go there, no wonder people get so emotional. No wonder people cry. No, people all vomit. People have all different kinds of reactions when they go into those spaces because memories are still there. And when we look on those, me say, but wait, we have a story, and nobody should really deprive us of our story. We should be able to tell our story. And when people say reparations, well, that is another discussion, how the reparations will work. Because I've often asked the question, reparations, yes. And if you're asking for financial reparations, how will that really, how it will work out? Will there be a check paid to a government from one government to the, I've often asked how the reparations financial payment would work out. But reparations is repair. And all of that damage that has been done, it has to be repaired. It has to be repaired. And when you look at it, why really should we be mourning? And I'm really asking the question now. Why should we be mourning for whomever it is that would have presided over such an atrocity? This queen had 70 years to right all the wrong, and she never did. I don't know why. So I don't know that I am going to mourn. I'm not mourning, and I'm not encouraging anybody to mourn. Well, if you want to mourn, fine. You must know why you want to mourn. But mourning is not something you mandate people to do. Or you tell people that, we are going to mourn for 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. It is, I don't know. Those are my views. That's how I feel. And a lot of people feel the way I feel. A lot of atrocities have been committed against us as people. And somebody needs to talk to us about it. Can we just forget it and move on? I don't know. As one person would have suggested, move on, forget it and move on. Because the persons who were paid for slavery, they certainly didn't forget it. They were paid millions of pounds. And the persons who suffered now are told, move on. How can that go? I don't know. How can that be right? How can that be true? It can't be. And we say Jamaica is a Christian country. So how are we going to approach those kinds of atrocities? Or we just say forgive and move on? I don't know. It is for us to find a way how we're going to deal with this thing. But trust me, I went down to Montego Bay and I felt a way when I saw those things. And I'm saying, if me just looking at it can feel away. I was sharing with a gentleman and him saying, no, sir, we couldn't manage them with something there because the least little thing touch we bruise up. The people who went through all of those things and undergo all of that brutalization, them the strong and ready and could have managed it. We nowadays people can manage. That's what he was sharing with me. We nowadays people can manage it. And I said to him, and our ancestors would have gone through so much. And we were on here, a Lego bird, and we were on here, I do all kind of dancing and I forget the struggle. People, wake up time, wake up time, wake up time, wake up time. I would have been talking a lot. Soon we're going to be joined by our guest, Chief Samako, President of the United Kingdoms of Africa. Let us play a little music, and then when we come back, we certainly will be joined by the Chief. Soon come.
Last night I had a dream upon the four corners of the world, shone the light of love, erasing our hatred, greed, and pain, revealing to man what life's really worth. 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years of peace. 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years of peace. Last night I had a dream. War was an obstacle of the past, buried in the history book. Racism was no more, extinguished by a ray of hope. 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years of peace. 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years of peace. Righteousness cover the earth, little children play and sing, over parts of feeling, make me wanna jump and sing it. 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years of peace. 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years of peace. 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years of peace. Yeah, 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 yeah. 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years of peace. 1,000 years, 1,000 years. Open doors still not welcome. People seeking to find some wisdom. Some working hard to gain an income. Their children dying anyway. What can we do, my brothers? How we gonna get her paid? See Many youths going astray, and I don't know what to do. I've got to say, break down the barriers, break down the fences. Too much people living in the trenches. Break down the barriers, break down the fences. Lift the people from out the trenches. Break down the barriers, break down the fences. Too much people living in the trenches. Break down the barriers, break down the fences. Lift the people from out the trenches. Ooh, yeah. No more segregation. We've got to stop this division by politics and religion. We've got to develop a plan now. Right and stand up now.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to Cultural Mix. I'm your host, Bev Moonchild, and we are in the studios of Fit FM 96.7, your life, your music. And we just heard Imara there, Open Doors, Still Not Welcome. What's the name of that song again? Break down the barriers, break down the fences. Too much people living in the trenches. Break down the barriers, break down the fences. We seem to be having a little difficulty because the chief was on with us, and then he dropped off, and then so he's gonna be joining soon. It's the vagaries, maybe, I don't know what is happening, but he will join us. He will join us soon. Chief Samako, the first, and he's of course the president of the United Kingdoms of Africa. I was asking earlier, have you ever heard of the United Kingdoms of Africa? If not, then this evening is when you shall hear about it. We are only hoping that things will sort itself out quickly, and we will be up and running and ready, talking with Chief Samako himself. What I can tell you is that he was born in Canada. So Chief Rex Samako, he was born Timothy McPherson, born in Canada, and guess what? Of Jamaican parents. And those parents obviously were of Maroon heritage. Chief Samako excelled in finance and banking, and later he moved to Germany to work on the rollout of the euro. Interesting. Over the years, he has been consistently concerned about the unbanked citizens and the underdevelopment of Africa and its diaspora. He has lobbied and succeeded in the African Union recognition of his initiative to establish the economic community of the sixth region of the African diaspora. Chief McPherson has also been recognized in many nations, kingdoms, and institutions on the African continent. At present, he carries the following titles: Chief Rex Samako, Chairman of the Economic Community of the African Diaspora 6th Region, President of the United Kingdoms of Africa. Chief is currently visiting Jamaica to receive an award from the United African Improvement Association, UNIA, Jamaica chapter, for his work in the African diaspora and on the African continent. Wow. So we are hoping he'll be able to be back online with us, because lots of things to talk about with him. Will Jamaica be United Kingdom of Jamaica? What will happen to the people in the Caribbean? What will happen to the people of African descent living in United States, Canada, and England? What will happen? I'm really interested. Chief is back with us, and we are saying, welcome to Fit FM 96.7. Chief Samako, welcome to Cultural Mix.
Thank you ever so kindly for having me, and a glorious good evening to you. Greetings.
Happy to have you, sir. I was reading a few
It's
things
a pleasure to be
about
here.
Chief Samako earlier, informing the listeners and those who have joined us online that you were born in Canada of Jamaican parentage. And those parents had Maroon heritage. Chief, welcome. We're going to get right into it, though. Being the president of the United Kingdoms of Africa, there are persons who have never heard of the United Kingdoms of Africa. Would you care to just take us back a little as to how this would have been arrived at? What happened? Where is the United Kingdoms of Africa?
Well, once again, thank you kindly for having me. As it pertains to the United Kingdoms of Africa as a institution and as a body itself, this is very much a consequence of efforts that have been ongoing for many decades now, recognizing that, of course, on the continent, there are two distinct forms of leadership. There is obviously the corporate colonial franchises or corporate states, as it were, that have come onto the continent since the 60s. And then there are the indigenous land owners and holders, which are, of course, the kingdoms of Africa, which is, of course, where all of us historically come from. We come from kingdoms and not from states. And as it pertains to UKA in and of itself, it is no secret that the last and most senior shareholder of presidency within the UKA institution was Muammar Gaddafi. And so there has been an ongoing effort on the one hand to organize the kings across the continent, and at the same time, we all recognize the legacy of our own kingdoms having been the expression divided and conquered during that era of colonial conquest. And so in this current hour, in this current dispensation, we see the kingdoms making a non-apologetic return to the global stage, indicating that indeed the era of captivity is over, and that is not only for the subjugated man and woman in diaspora, but also for those subjugated on the continent itself. And so in reclaiming their sovereignty and remanifesting their full identity, you see the kingdoms coming together once again. And indeed, the United Kingdoms of Africa is very much a crucial part of that reorganization across the continent.
Good to hear that, sir. I read here the sixth region. And as we are speaking of the kingdoms of Africa, where exactly is the sixth region of Africa?
Indeed, the sixth region expresses all lands and territories outside of the continent. So the continent itself is divided up into 5 regional blocks, and each regional block has its own economic community. So you see that there is North, South, East, West, and Central Africa. And within the auspices of the 1991 Abuja Treaty, we had the creation of what is called the African Economic Community. And what the African Economic Community does is it functions, or it's supposed to in any case in terms of its legislation, function as a superordinate economic government across the entire continent. And the diaspora is, of course, the 6th region, as it were, within that framework.
So Jamaica would be a part of the 6th region.
Indeed.
And the Caribbean.
All of the Caribbean, all of the diaspora globally.
Okay. I have been reading some information coming from you, Chief, and as we speak of Jamaica, what is the status of Jamaica at this time? Understanding that the Queen of England has just passed. What is our status now as it relates to being a member of the sixth region?
Well, at this very point in juncture, Jamaica itself is going obviously through a dynamic and actually a very exciting transformation. We have witnessed a era of captivity, enslavement, and affliction, where our sovereignty has been subjugated by those former powers which indeed subdued us, whether it be the Portuguese or the British. Um, that's neither here nor there. The point is the era of captivity is now fundamentally over. And as the kingdoms and the continent itself engages the diaspora, which is the sixth region, all of the diaspora is regarded as part of the sixth region. In the same way that people on the island of Jamaica would look to their family and friends in Canada, the United States, and Britain and say that is the Jamaican diaspora, well, we recognize that, okay, that is one direction, but of course, our identities also go in the opposite direction towards our ancestors. And so if you take someone like myself, having been born and raised in Canada, and then of course, returning to my parental land, this beautiful island of Jamaica, and then being non-apologetically committed to my ancestral identity, which compels me to remember Africa, then we all, through our own mental emancipation, ought to recognize and know ourselves as part of the sixth region of Africa. Notwithstanding, we appreciate that that level of self-understanding, that level of personal self-identification will take time for many of us to come to terms with, as the colonial process has not only been an era of economic exploitation, we have also been psychologically and spiritually subdued. And as a consequence of that trauma, certainly many of our people endure that psychological oppression and regard themselves as being something that they fundamentally are not.
Wow. You have said a lot there, speaking about persons who may be saying to themselves what they really are not. I'm listening to you, Chief, and I'm saying, in this shift that is now taking place, especially we are in Jamaica, so let's talk in the Jamaican context. Each person who is listening to you now, speaking of this this shift really in what has been happening, and say, but how will all of this affect me? One might ask. How will I be impacted? Will I be positively impacted? Will I be negatively impacted? How will all of this affect the people on an individual level?
Well, I think I'll try to answer that question from two different angles.
Okay.
If you are faith driven, then you will recognize that in Genesis 15, it indeed says that we will go through 400 years of captivity. Now, it also indicates that those whom we serve shall be judged, and we will come out of that captivity with great prosperity. So insofar as we now look over our shoulder and see the 400 years behind us, insofar as we have witnessed the judgment of the international community during these last 24 plus months, we can only assume that what is lying before us is prosperity. For in spiritual realms, we are in absolute fulfillment. Now, in terms of layman's discussion, where people think about what is in this for me, and they think at a purely, let me say, materialistic level, we appreciate that when we talk about prosperity, the first level of prosperity is a relationship with our divine creator. And then once we have that spiritual prosperity, the next level of prosperity is unequivocally physical, economic, monetary wealth, and abundance. And so we must have the full expectation that the steps that we are taking will elevate all of the people on this island, and indeed all of our people throughout the 6th region, especially as the international community is contending to reorganize itself. It is high time that the African family reorganizes itself. And indeed, Jamaica has been acknowledged for its outstanding philosophical and spiritual leadership role as it relates to Rastafarianism, as it relates to Garveyism. All of our people on the continent understand Jamaica's contribution to our mental emancipation. And of course, there's the expectation that Jamaica will continue to take a leadership role in that very act which it started. And the next stage is non-apologetically economic emancipation, industrialization from a Afrocentric perspective, and appreciating the abundance of wealth that we always have had, and making that wealth work to our collective benefit.
Wow. Chief Samako, you talk about the abundance, right?
Indeed.
And the economic abundance, and the abundance of wealth. Lots of persons' ears now are opened and popped up to listen how, as a country, as individuals, how we will come out of this captivity. Seeing prosperity as what is to happen after captivity, and the form that prosperity will take. How, in your view, will the economic structure that is going to come out of this captivity period, how will that economic and abundance, how will it happen? How will it all play out?
Well, first and foremost, as an industrialist, I always think about trade. When our ancestors were brought here, although the pretense that was initially given was spiritual or religious, with a view towards creating a Christian nation here in this so-called New World, we discovered that, in fact, that wasn't the agenda at all. The agenda was the exploitation of the African for purposes of European wealth and European prosperity. So we already know how trade, industrialization, and the exploitation of resources leads to the creation of wealth. What must begin to happen going forward is that we now look at trade from a perspective not only of South trade, which is inevitable, but recognizing that throughout the 6th region, the diaspora is in every single country around the world. And if you talk strictly about the Jamaican family, we know that there are more Jamaicans living off of the island than on the island. And what that means is that we have an abundance of knowledge, an abundance of skills and capacities that is globally dispersed. There are Jamaicans in Japan, Jamaicans in China, Jamaicans in Russia, Jamaicans in India, Jamaicans, of course, in the US, Canada, and Britain, but that's already known. That's the common stuff. What we forget about is that Jamaicans are literally everywhere around the world. And so as we begin to drive trade between Africa and the sixth region, recognizing that within the sixth region, we are everywhere. That means harnessing our talents wherever they may be so that we can have a successful integration of the industrialization process. That means that when we, let me take 2 steps back and just give a basic example. When we need to communicate vis-a-vis devices such as this interactive framework online, we eventually must reach a phase where the African family sits down and comfortably says that we too are communicating on computers that were manufactured from start to end by our own people. So when we say made in Africa, that is not excluding the diaspora, that is inclusive of those Africans within the sixth region. So that we reach that point where we recognize that we possess the vast majority of natural resources. And so as we extract those natural resources, we then ourselves put them into a state of productivity. We ourselves put them into finished products and goods. We ourselves are the creator of all that we aspire to have and possess. And in so doing, we address and eliminate this constructed dynamic of poverty that has afflicted us for these past 400 and 500 years. We eliminate this social strata, which has been arbitrarily created to have the vast majority of our people as what would have been called in the previous generation, the niggers of the earth, you see. So we elevate ourselves economically and take our position on the global stage in the exact same way that we do it in arts, the exact same way that we do it in entertainment, the exact same way that we do it in sports. We now step on that competitive realm of economics and not simply on the natural material supply-based realm of economics. And insofar as the Jamaican identity is more than established, appreciated, and honored by the global African family, we owe it to ourselves as a people to continue to maintain that standard, to continue to maintain that leadership role that we have somehow had bestowed upon us by our divine creator as a people, and that we continue in this 21st century to make a non-apologetic stance in the same way that a Usain Bolt would run his 100 meters and say, listen, I may beat you guys by a lot, but I'm an athlete. That's what I do. I win. We must come forth and enter that economic competitive realm and say, if we are all going to play by fair rules, we will play by the rules of the game, then the Jamaican family is now entering that economic realm. And that starts first and foremost with money. You cannot compete competitively if you don't have a currency to drive your economy. And so we come forth first and foremost with the creation of our currency, being the African kingdom's lumi. We acquire the support for our currency, both on the continent and throughout the diaspora. We consolidate in the same way that during this last epoch, we saw that the US dollar was the primary currency of reserve on the international stage within first world countries. We say that the third world is now entering that stage. And we are doing things a little bit differently because we see the environment has been horrifically polluted. Our ecology is devastated. We see that poverty is rampant. And so we will build structures, monetary structures, that facilitate our reality and will allow for the economic transformation so that when we stand on that competitive stage, and there is a race for global central bank digital currencies, we stand on the stage and we look to our competitors. We look to the Federal Reserve Bank. We look to the European Central Bank. We look to the Bank of China. And we say, okay, we have seen your competitive abilities. We have seen the way you operate on the international stage. Now we are putting on our running shoes. And now we are going to compete and watch what we achieve as a people.
Wow. And in that economic realm that you speak of, and the money that we would need to compete with the others that you have just mentioned, the currency that you mentioned, the Lumi currency, is what a number of persons who, when they heard that I was going to talk with you, they wanted to hear more of.
Indeed, indeed. Obviously, there is a great rally at a global level behind Lumi. And indeed, for those people who have already created their Lumi accounts and have been utilizing Lumi since we issued it at a global level, they would recognize that there has been some technical difficulties recently. And as much as these IT-related difficulties have been a frustration to many, we regard it as a vindication, if you will. Because what has happened is that within no time at all, we started off with 10,000 people every single day creating new accounts. And then we had millions of people on the platform, which created a dynamic that during a technical upgrade of the platform itself collapsed because so many Africans around the world are anxious and desirous to do business and trade with their fellow African on the continent and throughout the sixth region. So while on the one hand, the platform has had difficulties, those difficulties are a direct indication of the success of our new global African currency, the Lumi.
How, Chief, how did people get access to this Lumi to start gathering it, as you say, in their accounts? How did that happen?
Right. As you will appreciate, and this is what I was saying earlier about a competition for central bank digital currencies, while the rest of the world, because we're now in full competition mode, while the rest of the world was contemplating how shall they move forth with their central bank digital currencies, we had already anticipated, as financial engineers and geniuses, we had already anticipated the direction that the global market was going to be taking. And so in as early as 2014, we had created our Lumi currency within the Maroon territories.
Okay.
Most people on the international stage didn't quite understand it at that time. The financial engineers that I was communicating with in Germany, in London, in particularly those in Frankfurt, were trying to understand when would this great rush for this type of currency occur. And I made the statement in 2014 quite candidly and directly to all of the financial sector within Europe. I said, listen, within the next 5 years, the banking system as you know it will go through a complete transformation.
What
And so,
occurred? How did you come to say that, though? What were you seeing?
you know, when you spend enough time in the market, you develop an appreciation for fundamental trends.
Okay.
And what was clear to me is that all of the currencies on the international stage at that time actually had no intrinsic value. You have a US dollar that is no longer being backed by gold, but it is being used to purchase gold in Africa.
Oh, look
So
at that.
look at that. They're simply pressing print on their currency. And then once they print their currency without any value, they then use that worthless paper to purchase our precious gold, to purchase our precious diamonds, to purchase our precious rubies and sapphires. And so any intelligent financial engineer or central bank governor would understand that that model is actually a model of insanity, and it could not be sustained. And
How different was the Lumi when you created it? What did you? Is it backed by something?
Of course, yes. Thank you very much for that question. So in the creation of the Lumi, the first point was to create a classic, not currency, but form of money in the way that we all understand money to be, which is as a medium of exchange, as a unit of account, and as a store of value. And recognizing that, just to take an example so that you can appreciate the context and sphere.
Chief? Yes, something is happening there. We're talking with Chief Samaka I, President of the United Kingdoms of Africa. We're having a little technical difficulty there. He was on the point of the Lumi because, as he spoke earlier, he is reminding us that this period of time that we are going through, there's an economic shift. He mentioned we are coming out of captivity, and when we come out of 400 years of captivity, what we now have ahead of us is prosperity. And we are talking about prosperity, economic prosperity. He was on the point of the Lumi currency that he has created with his partners, and the Lumi currency is what he is suggesting will be used among the kingdoms and the sixth region for economic advancement and to have economic security. He is on the point of what is the Lumi currency and what it is backed by. Is he back with us? We have feedback here. Okay, I'm not able to see, I'm not able to see the feedback at all. Okay, all right. So we have Michelle Scarlett. If we only, are you back with us, Chief?
I hope so. There we are. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yes.
We're back again.
Good. So you were on the matter now of the Lumi. I asked you the question, what is the Lumi backed by?
Right, indeed. So recognizing that money must be money and not simply currency, meaning money must actually have some kind of value. What we have established in the first instance in 2014 was a currency that was backed by solar energy, utilizing 100 kilowatt hours of solar energy. And to understand what that means, we only need to look at how the Emiratis within Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, or if you take a place like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, how they utilized their oil reserves and their petrodollars to spice up their currency so that their intrinsic value within the monetary policy. So looking at how oil dollars, or petrodollars rather, were able to transform the Middle Eastern economy so that in a very short period of time, a place like Dubai became one of the most dynamic places for development, research and development in the world. We appreciate that we've also learned a lesson from that experience, because the petrodollars that they had facilitated the climate problem that we are currently experiencing today. And so the next phase that all members of the international community must adhere to, it's not just about the African family, this is a global topic addressing climate change. So by having Lumi under 100 kilowatt hours of solar energy, we create a currency on the global stage today, and that is energy. There is no economy, not in the near future, not in the mid-distance future, nor the long term, in which energy will not play a crucial role of that economy's stability, growth, and development. And of course, for the African family, in the first instance, our best source of energy is, of course, the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So by connecting Lumi to the greatest source of energy that we have at our availability, we connect it to an intrinsic value that we know we will always demand and need. And the logic of that is also appreciated when we consider that today 650 million people across continental Africa have no access to electricity. When you now step off of the continent and come into the sixth region, and you look at places like this very island of Jamaica, you look at places like Brazil, you basically cast your eye wherever the diaspora is in large numbers, and you will discover that we have energy issues. The power is on, and the next minute it arbitrarily goes off as if it were magic. You say, why is our power going off when we have so many resources that are capable of providing us with energy? So by integrating and connecting our energy supply intelligently with our monetary policy, we create a near infallible system. And then, of course, as that was in 2014 in its purest form, backed by energy. And then, of course, as we engaged the kingdoms on the continent who have an abundance of wealth, they made their commitment and contribution of gold and other precious commodity towards the Lumi. So that in this current structure, we see that the Lumi is underwritten by 100 kilowatt hours of solar energy and pegged against 0.2592 grams of gold, or 4 grains of gold. And so we have a very dynamic, robust currency. And indeed, the policy that we put in place, I am certain, has been a cause of inspiration for the Zimbabwean Reserve Bank, which last month also took a similar model, recognizing they could no longer go the way they were going with a fiat instrument. They created their Mosi gold coin so that now their currency also is gold back. We see that all members across the international community are recognizing from a banking perspective that money must become money again and not simply be currency or fiat paper, if you will.
I totally understand what you're saying, Chief. And for those persons who find it a little difficult to understand because they would have come to understand money in a different kind of way and not understand that before time there were different ways of trading until, as you call it, these fiat currencies would have come up, and those are the currencies people have become accustomed to. So
Indeed.
to hear of the creation now of a currency that's going to be the currency within the kingdoms of Africa and the sixth region, persons may not be able to grasp it so well, but it is something that is interesting, and we are going to, of course, be hearing more of how this currency is going to change our lives, as some persons have put it, and how that will be the currency to cause the economic freedom and the abundance and the wealth and the prosperity that others are referring to in this economic shift.
Indeed.
So we understand that clearly. Another thing that I would love for you to quickly reassure persons who may have a little hesitation about the Lumi as it pertains to Jamaica now is how our Bank of Jamaica had reacted to it initially when it was announced? Just quickly to reassure persons who may have that concern.
In what regard? I mean, I don't want to point a finger at our dear brothers in the Bank of Jamaica, because at the end of the day, we appreciate some of the limitations that they have in their ability to make a succinct policy in the interest of the collective. It goes without question, and it is part of the historical legacy that we are coming from. So they will make the kind of statements they feel they have to make. Notwithstanding, there does come a point when a people must take responsibility for themselves.
Yes.
And do those actions in terms of policies which are in the non-apologetic interest of the people.
Exactly.
And the Bank of Jamaica is no exception to that rule.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I was listening to you earlier this week, and you had a grand announcement to make. I want to talk to you about that. On the
Indeed.
12th of September, was there a significant thing that happened on the 12th of September 2022 that you may want to talk about?
Effectively, I think what is most important for the listening audience and the viewership is to be very much aware of the fact that on the 12th of September, we concluded the final legal protocols for retiring the 1962 Constitution of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And in its retirement, we saw the establishment of the June 22nd of 2022 charter for the United Kingdom of Jamaica and New Africa. And in terms of that activity on the 12th, what we saw was the final delivery of the necessary protocols to King's House, to the Governor General's office.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, Chief, what is break it down for the persons who are still saying, wow, the final how did you put it?
The final protocol.
The final protocol. So we saw the retirement of. Break it down a little for the people who are saying what?
Well, it's actually a very long topic, but let us keep it succinct and to the point.
Yes.
Previously, we were under British colonial rule.
Mm-hmm.
As of September 12th,
mm-hmm.
that was the case no more. And so what it means is that in addition to retiring the Queen's Constitution, that also implies in its framework or implications the retirement of the Governor General and the Queen's Prime Minister. And so as such, I would make that statement so that we appreciate that when we speak about the Governor General and the Prime Minister, we must speak about the former Governor General and the former Prime Minister, as we are now legally in a new epoch. My concern about the actions of the 12th is that the administration itself has not come out as yet and informed the people, because I would like to think that at such a glorious time in Jamaican history, when all of our people ought to be out in the streets celebrating, when all of our people ought to be giving thanks to our ancestors, giving praise and worship for this new era that is upon us, the simple truth is the word has not been given to the people.
So
they
Chief,
imagine themselves to be under our cousin Charles.
Chief, let me ask you the question.
please.
You refer to the Queen of England as your cousin. Just remember, I'm going to ask you why. But as we are talking about this new epoch, this new era, the rule is no more as of September 12th. What will it take for the administration to come forward? You speak about the former Governor General, the former Prime Minister. What will it take for that administration to come out and say, guys, we are no more? What will it
Well,
take?
what I won't say what inspires a man
Okay.
to come out and do what he is supposed to do honorably,
Okay.
notwithstanding the new framework
Mm-hmm.
is in place.
Mm-hmm.
And we recognize that there is something called the Stockholm Syndrome, in which people are indeed psychologically traumatized
Okay.
by the history. And I would say that most people on this island are. And so that will create hesitation and reservations towards certain types of action.
Okay.
And so we would want to be patient, notwithstanding this week has come to an end. And there comes a point where men and kings must come to terms with a new truth. And as such, that patience would eventually expire. And, you know, because I have Jamaican parents, me know say sometimes, man, I have to chat some patois. So in that context, we will patiently wait for the honorable deed to happen. And should it not happen, we will seek other resources. I have personally reached out to both the public defender's office, as well as the ombudsman's office to garner some assistance in this communication. However, I am hoping that they will also be forthcoming very soon, so that we can achieve the outcome that we have to achieve. But let me say this very clearly, irrespective, because we saw also when Donald Trump was put out of the office, you know, he had no intention on coming out of the office, and he made all kinds of bogus statements. And I don't think that the leadership on this island is of such a caliber as that, so that we would find a higher degree of integrity and a more succinct resolution to what I've described already as being the most monumental hour on this very island in these last 400 years plus of captivity.
Chief.
And just let me make this one additional statement in that regard to the listening audience. Irrespective of what statements do or do not come out of that office, it is important that our people at least begin their personal celebration in this new epoch and era.
Okay. You speak of the new framework. The new framework is to be instituted. And as you speak, I'm looking back and I'm saying, but wait, immediately after the death of Queen Elizabeth, right thereafter, the announcement was made for the king. So is there a break really, or isn't it a continuation? Is there a break?
Well, in terms of royal announcements, it should be known that the statement of the kingdoms was made prior to the death. Indeed, I had given my initial response publicly with regards to our cousin Elizabeth's passing prior to Charles's announcement, which came the following day.
Okay.
And as it pertains to the charter establishing the United Kingdom of Jamaica and New Africa,
Mhm.
that was already in Buckingham Palace as of June 22nd.
Okay.
So the works that we are doing are not per se new. At some point or other, she would have met her demise. And in our preparation for a dynamic transition into a new era,
Mhm.
we were fully prepared and ready.
Okay. Okay. Back to the question I told you I was going to ask you, referring to the Queen and even Charles now as cousins.
Oh, are you sure we have enough time for that question?
Yes, 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 Chief. Yes, Chief. Yes, Chief. Yes, Chief. We have enough time. We have enough. I'm just interested, and there are other persons who may want to hear because you have been referring to her as cousin. You know, so I personally want to hear, and I know there are other persons who are interested. Tell us.
Let me make a very clear statement as it pertains to that. When we speak about kingdoms, we are talking about the oldest institution on planet Earth. If you pick up your good book, the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
you will see that Adam was given what? Dominion. And that speaks to his office as a king. Now, that very book was written by who? Our ancestors. All
Okay.
the things that we read in that Old Testament is written by African men and
Mm-hmm.
women, and is pertaining expressly to our experiences
Mm-hmm.
as a people. It's not referring to someone else. So we must come to terms with that acknowledgement. From the perspective of the kingdoms today, we see ourselves and define ourselves of kingdoms how?
Mm-hmm.
Organized under our divine creator
Okay.
as King of Kings.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as such, when we talk about the laws of kings,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about the laws of kings as it pertains in relation to our divine creator, the living God Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
And insofar as the head and throne of England is also the governor of the Church of England, it means that their understanding of themselves is no different than the way the African ancestors created it from the very beginning. And so while we may have constant contestations, and it is nothing new, you know, some people would say, why do you call them cousins? Well, because they are our cousins. It doesn't matter if there are issues and challenges. Those have always been there. We saw when the Greeks sent their hero, as it were, Alexander, some 2,000 plus years ago to Egypt, and then he eventually conquered from Egypt to India. All of that contestation has continued from Greece to the Roman Empire and until this very day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we recognize ourselves as cousins before the throne of the living God. And if we need to reprimand each other, it is not done on issues of parliamentary debates. It is
Okay.
not done on issues of he says, she says.
Mm-hmm.
It is done on spiritual realms and obligations of leading peoples. So,
Mm-hmm.
and let me just add one additional nuance to this point, because to appreciate what I'm saying, we all must recognize that when our captivity began, the explanation was never economic. The explanation was always spiritual, or as you know, as we say today, religious. And indeed, many of the kingdoms on the continent were duped, because when the European missionaries came to Africa, they discovered, of course, that Africa was already predominantly a Christian nation. However, because we knew ourselves to be ancient Hebrews, because we knew ourselves to be ancient Israelites, we practice our 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 religious expression, if you will, according to that ancient Judaic method. And then when the missionaries came, they saw that we were not practicing Roman Catholicism. And so, contrary to the notion that they brought us Christianity, what they brought us was Roman Catholicism. And so I say that to come back now to the key point that as kings, we must know and understand ourselves in terms of our responsibility before the throne of our divine creator.
Wow, you have said a lot, Chief. I still want to hear a little more about the fact, because I've heard you spoke about this too, is how each person, each citizen of African descent, of African heritage, how each citizen will begin to benefit from the Lumi. I'm so much interested in that aspect of it. I heard you made an announcement for the 1st of October, 2022, how each person can begin to benefit. Would you want to expound a little on that?
Indeed. Pertaining to the provisions of reparations that are clearly stated within the charter itself for the United Kingdom of Jamaica and New Africa, each and every person on this island is entitled to a reparation in a parity amount of 198,000 British pound. That reparation will not be paid at one time. It is to be amortized over a period of 33 years.
190?
198,000 British pounds.
How was the calculation done?
In terms of coming to that amount?
Right.
You know, when they supposedly ended slavery in the United States, there was a promise of 40 acres and a mule.
48, okay.
And today, when you look at basic agricultural land in the United States or in that part of the world, I won't speak about high-end land value, but basic agricultural land, that 40 acres and a mule works out to an approximate value of 198,000 British pound parity. So we haven't changed that formula. We've simply brought it to present value.
Okay, so that is due to each person, you say?
Right. Notwithstanding, as I said, it's to be amortized over a 33-year period in which each person would receive a parity value of 500 British pounds per month.
Per month?
Per month.
Each person, meaning each citizen of?
We say each man, woman, and child.
Okay,
each person, yes.
Okay. And that begins October, you say?
Right. The official issuance date would commence on October 1st. If we have continued delays in terms of the arrangements with the administration, then any delays would obviously be calculated in that value. So nobody should expect that they will not get their money. They will get their money no matter what. And when all things are resolved, what they did not receive will have been accumulated to a present value at the time that it is being issued.
How will they receive it, Chief?
So as you know, most people I'm sorry, are you asking in terms of what methods of delivery? Or
Yes. That's what I'm asking, yes.
Right. So as you know, Lumi currently has been circulating globally as a central bank digital currency.
Okay.
And in the exact same way that the US administration directly sent economic stimulus to its citizens during the COVID-19 crisis, we would send the reparations payment directly to each person on this island.
So who is paying the reparations?
Now, in terms of our new enjoyment enjoyment with our kingdoms on the continent. I speak now from the hat of the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
What is important to recognize is that before we ever go on the international stage
Mm-hmm.
asking anybody for anything,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing we must do is begin a process of self-healing, a process of self-reparations. And so through our discussions with the kingdoms, they recognize that our people must receive reparations. I speak of African kingdoms now. And so they have made that commitment to ensure that our people are able to receive reparations for the atrocities that has happened to us for these last 400 years. And we receive it of ourselves for ourselves, so that we don't present ourselves as beggars on the international stage. We have abundance. We have wealth. Indeed, all of the wealth that you see, whether it be in Britain or in France or in America or wherever it presents itself these days, is wealth that has been in one way, shape, or form extracted from our ancient motherland. And while they have, well, I won't even go into that. Thank you. Yes, next talk, please.
I'm reading a comment here because persons who are watching us on Facebook Live.
Yes.
So someone is saying, Michelle Scarlett, if only we as a people could maintain this level of thinking, we would undoubtedly be so powerful and rich in every way. She was speaking of the African kingdom Lumi, and I want to say, Michelle, here speaking with us is the creator of the Lumi. So we are talking with the man himself. She was just updating us, on the Lumi and when it was created and when it was introduced to Jamaica. So I'm telling her that we are here speaking with the creator of the Lumi. We are speaking to Chief Samako himself. You were about to, though, comment on her response here.
I very much would like to thank her for her comment. Truly, our state of mind is what drives, in addition to our spirituality, our very sense of being. Some would say that the state of mind is what becomes the expression of culture. So as we begin not to change who we are, but to come into a deeper understanding of who we are, you see, then we elevate our thought process and identity. And so I thank her kindly for that comment.
Several endorsements. I have seen several kings of different kingdoms across Africa endorsing the approach and endorsing your initiative here, Chief. Are there any endorsements from any of the other chiefs or kings or, in the 6th region?
Well, on the continent itself, of course, within UKA, we have upwards of some near 700 chiefs and kings that are members. So when you talk about endorsements, our constituency is significant and substantive. As it pertains to the diaspora, when you look at the structure and framework of ECO6, our largest membership is actually our Quilombos community in Brazil.
Okay.
And so as a constituency of ECO6, the indigenous leaders in Brazil are obviously a intricate part of our movement. We have indigenous communities in Canada and the United States that are also members of ECO6. And then, of course, throughout Central and South America, outside of Brazil, we have numerous indigenous communities that are also members.
Okay. What has been the feedback since you have made this announcement? What has been the feedback here, particularly in Jamaica? The announcement of us now entering a new period, a new time. What has been the feedback, or people really don't understand what is happening?
I would say there's been one of two reactions. There is a segment of people who are probably still doing backflips as we speak right now, as they are fundamentally enthralled with joy and enthusiasm. And then there's another segment of people who haven't quite grasped the totality of the implications of what is happening. And as such, they're not able to, or maybe not willing to necessarily as yet, share that same level of enthusiasm. And let us be clear about this. And I've said it a couple of times already in the call, but we are coming out of 400 years of captivity. So it is very difficult to conceptualize those very words. In 1834, we were told that slavery was abolished. But the fact of the matter is, I will correct my own language on that, because we were never told that slavery was abolished. What happened was legislation was written and passed so that within the books it said slavery was abolished. But the average African in the field, the average African throughout the 6th region did not know that slavery was abolished, and consequently he remained in a state and condition of captivity, because all the things that we are talking about and achieving this very hour should have been completed in 1834.
Yes, I get you. In understanding, Chief, I would say a majority of the people would not get exactly what it is that you have said here. I can tell you, majority of people don't understand what you have said, because
No, but please let us not say the majority, because I wouldn't want to accept the idea that the majority of our people cannot appreciate the implications of what is currently happening.
Or some
Let us say-
person,
for all
large
purposes,
number of
let us say a minority. Let us just say a minority of people.
a minority. Okay, let us agree to disagree on that one. Um, so this new framework, is there a timeline? Is there a period that we should prepare? What I'm trying to come to grips with this my very self. Is there a time frame? I know you say persons may do the good thing or the honorable thing, but how many persons are willing to step away from power, as it were? Is there a timeline? What will the new framework look like?
I don't want to speak about timelines, because in my mind, and I speak as a free and sovereign man, and I enjoy my freedom and sovereignty, it's already a done issue. At the end of the day, it is for the rest of our people to come to terms with this new reality. And unofficially, every individual, every man and woman will do that in their own terms and ability to appreciate what is happening. As it pertains to the administration itself, it is my expectation and it is my hope that in the exact same way that the international community has rallied itself to say, oh my goodness, look, Russia has invaded the Ukraine, that they would come to an appreciation to say, oh my goodness, look, the island of Jamaica is now the United Kingdom of Jamaica and New Africa, but the old administration is still sitting in the chair. What can we do to assist in reconciling this dynamic and exciting transformative period? For me, this is only an hour of joy and celebration. So I have no other consideration of time except that joy and celebration settles into all of us and causes my, there's a reality and then there's a dream, right? Now, in the dream, the Governor General and the Prime Minister come forth with expressions of joy and liberty and speak to their people about this new era. In reality, time will tell what actually happens.
Mm-hmm. I'm I'm thinking about it, Chief, and I'm saying, I don't know, I don't know if as we know it, the administration, if they will be willing, if they will be bold enough to come forward. And as you say, time will tell. Time will indeed tell. The United Kingdom of Jamaica. I'm just listening to you now, and I'm saying, what will the United Kingdom of Jamaica look like?
Wow. You see, now you've asked me a proper question. Because in order to understand what the United Kingdom of Jamaica and New Africa must look like, we must understand what it looks like today. And today, it looks like a place where people do not have proper running water within their home. It looks like a place where the standard of living isn't necessarily so high, but it is so high because people are not earning enough money to live the lifestyle and standard of living that they should have. And so through the new transformation that is upon us, we should expect to see a vibrant Jamaica in which our greatest minds are being harnessed. And when I say our greatest minds, I start off with our farmer, recognizing that food is, in the exact same way that we speak about energy, but even more so, sine qua non to all of our survival. And Jamaica is amongst one of the greatest growers of agricultural foods in terms of organic foods on the international stage. So first and foremost, we see a transformative, non-apologetic opportunity for our farmers to be receiving, on the one hand, a reparations that acts as only a cushion, if you will, to facilitate those business ambitions, those entrepreneurial aspirations that we know that our farmers have, but have never been able to previously achieve. Simple things in the past, like having to pay XYZ amount of money for a cannabis license, and then nobody having those funds available. So we begin to level the playing field by ensuring that through direction and instruction, not only do we have liquidity, but we are engaged in an economic process of trade and development where we approach the international community bringing the best of ourselves. And I don't want to be the one that defines anybody's best. So I would utilize that term, bringing the best of ourselves to the global stage as we compete in this new economic era.
Chief, you said I just asked you a proper question. I'm going to ask you another proper question. Where is the evidence that the 1962 Constitution has come to an end, or retirement, as you would have put it? Is there
What do
any
you mean
evidence?
when you say where is the evidence?
No, earlier you spoke about coming to an end of or retiring, putting into retirement that Constitution. I just want to, it's a question that came in. Where is that evidence that the Constitution has been retired?
Well, short of the Governor General and the Prime Minister making the statements, and I think, not to be hostile or aggressive, but I think I'm going to take this question head on and make a very clear statement.
Okay, good.
In light of that question.
All right.
But from another angle and context. In our captivity, we have become accustomed to hearing information and taking authoritative information from our subjugators. And without getting into a discussion on race, let me say it directly, from people of a Caucasian persuasion. Now, as we enter this new epoch, I will make no apology, neither as a chief nor a king, for the statements that I make. Where is the evidence? I just told you so. So in this new era, we must become accustomed to ourselves as Africans having positions of authority and being in positions to make very clear and candid public statements from which we develop trust amongst ourselves and stop looking at ourselves with skepticism. Now, of course, that skepticism we recognize is a consequence. It's a psychological consequence of the era of subjugation. We were taught not to have confidence in our voice. We were taught to have only secondary statuses of authority, to always be in position number 2. Thus, you would ask the question, well, who's in position number 1? I want to hear it from them. But as we enter this new era, and as we begin to compete economically on the global stage, so that our victories come in banking, our victories come in industrialization, our victories come in research and development, our victories come from fintech companies, we must become accustomed to seeing our people as leaders and making definitive, non-apologetic statements about new events, and not being subjected to such a question as, where's the evidence?
Mm-hmm.
If you want the evidence of where your liberation came from,
Mm-hmm.
ask any of the former colonials where their evidence is for maintaining the perpetuation of your captivity.
I see where you're going, Chief, with that one. Um, I heard you speak 2 days ago, and you spoke of an executive council. Would you want to share with us quickly what the executive council is and who are the members of the executive council?
Yes, indeed. The executive council is named within the charter. Keep in mind that the charter is not a constitution. So the executive council and the people of Jamaica will have to create a new constitution.
Okay.
The charter is simply an instrument of segue from the previous 62 constitution to local indigenous sovereignty as we segue into that creation of the new constitution.
Okay.
Now, within the executive council itself, there are 5 people that are named for those roles and duties within the executive council. And then there is a 6th person which is appointed as a speaker to the executive council. And just to put that in context, because we speak with regards to indigenous sovereignty and the sovereigns on the island, the charter recognizes that there are many sovereigns here. It was never the case that it was only our British cousins who were sovereigns. There are many sovereigns here. The charter doesn't try to list all of the sovereigns. It recognizes that there are many sovereigns, and those sovereigns must be acknowledged. We already understand and appreciate, and hence the executive council appoints the sovereigns from the 4 major indigenous communities, being Moortown, Charlestown, Scots Hall, and Occompong, so that each of the heads of those indigenous communities are obviously part of the council because they're already sovereigns in and of themselves. And then a 5th sovereign has been taken from the current administration, who is herself also a indigenous leader or has been successful in achieving indigenous honors from the kingdoms of Africa. and as such, that honor has been recognized.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
the sixth sovereign comes from the indigenous community of Jamaica. If you want, I could name these sovereigns, as it were, but I think most people are familiar with who the leadership of Moortown is, where we speak specifically of Chief Sterling.
Mm-hmm.
Within Charlestown, we speak of Chief Douglas. Within Scots Hall, we speak of Chief Ladabadir. Within Occompong, we speak of Chief Curry.
Curry, yes.
Within the institution called the Indigenous Community of Jamaica, we speak of His Royal Highness Prince Kalanji. And from the current administration, we speak of Kamina Johnson Smith.
So
And then we
His Royal
recognize-
Highness is the artist we know as Sizzla Kalonji.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yes, he's the Rasta president.
And then we recognize that there are other sovereigns on the island. Certainly, we can never forget our indigenous Taino and the other communities that are here. So the charter recognizes everyone. And the
Okay.
executive council has that responsibility
Mm-hmm.
of bringing a new era of
So it's
harmony
the
onto this
executive.
island. Say it again, please.
Are we to understand that it is this council that will bring together the new constitution?
That's correct.
Okay. 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 Uh, and certainly, of course, they wouldn't do this on their own. They would engage their various communities.
Precisely that, and of course, we must look at it as first and foremost, we must come to terms with the fact that we're in a new era, a new epoch, and we are doing something that, as a people, we have not done before. So every question, every reservation, every consideration is actually a consequence of, let me say, the old world order.
Old world order.
You see, in the old world order, you have many concerns and many reservations because things have not gone the way they ought to go.
Yes.
But in this new dispensation, we must embrace it with the totality of its full implications and spirit. So, yes.
Yes. I'm just smiling because I'm saying, I heard you mention the old world order, and we are used to hearing of the new world order. So I was just smiling when I'm saying, wow, we really are in a new world order. And we need to understand all the implications and all the bearings that will come from this new world order. It's interesting to hear you, Chief, and to know that as a people, we will now be a part of this new framework, this new dispensation, this new initiative. So I'm smiling because I'm looking and I'm saying, wow, the United Kingdom of Jamaica. And just listening to you, trying to visualize what the United Kingdom of Jamaica will look like, So that's the reason for my smile.
Consider this. When Dubai was being erected, nobody really knew how it would look. It's one thing to look at designs on a computer screen or to have physical models in front of you. But really, the joy and the celebration is in the process of building and coming to terms with your new reality. And while we have seen what all the world has to offer, we have seen their Google, we have seen their iPhone, we have seen their electric cars, we have seen their yachts, we've seen it all, but they have not seen us as yet. And so when you speak about what the new Jamaica will look like, the first step is building on that economic framework so that this very island this crown, this gem, in fact, in the crown, can look however our people's hearts so desire.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that. And it's that simple.
It
When
is
we look
that
at all of
simple.
the issues that confront the island today, whether it be the rampant violence and murder, whether it be the inability of school children to have bus fare to go to school, the reality of all of those challenges is first and foremost economic.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why we've had that economic hardship is because we've perpetuated a system of trade that leads to our subjugation.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, as we begin to look at the developmental needs of ourselves as a people and to enjoin the expertise even of Jamaica's diaspora throughout the world and engage in trade and development with the motherland, we no longer need to think about counting Jamaica's murder rates because we want to be counting Jamaica's millionaire rates as we take this leadership role.
Yes. One of my questions, I hear you answering it, was how will trade and commercial activities be affected under the new arrangement for the United Kingdom of Jamaica? But you would have spoken to that just now. Errol Grant is talking back and being a part of this conversation, Chief, and he's saying, Errol Grant, the time has come again to rule ourselves by writing our own constitution. Thank you, Errol, for that. And Cynthia Francis is agreeing with everything that you're saying, Chief. She's saying, "Here, here." You know, when you're in the house and you're talking, here, here.
Indeed.
Cynthia,
Here.
Cynthia Francis is agreeing with you. Obviously, she's understanding clearly what you have outlined here in talking to us this evening on Cultural Mix on Fit FM 96.7. Lastly, Chief, what it is that you want us as a people to understand as we kind of wind down this discussion, what it is that you want people to understand, what it is that you want people to know that is happening in this new time. What are we to come out of this discussion understanding? What are we to come out of this discussion knowing or looking forward to?
Let me not use an analogy, but a basic truth. As we put the old world behind us, we come to terms with the reality that in this new era, the African family is already very much in the lead. We're already very much in the lead. Now, as it pertains specifically to this island, the global African family looks to Jamaican artists for the inspiration of their music on the one hand, of their literature on the other hand, of their scholasticism on the other hand. So as the global African family looks to us in a leadership capacity, we must understand that we are touching the ground running. And although this is a race of economics, when you touch the ground running, that means you got to come to terms fairly quickly with the new reality and begin to run. Because it's not a 100-meter sprint. It's more like doing a marathon under relay. And we have to be passing the baton on one to another. It is a baton of encouragement. It is a baton of upliftment. It is a baton of transformation. Because at the end of the day, I'm very much aware of the fact that our people are psychologically and spiritually traumatized,
Indeed.
and we all require this collective encouragement of
Mhm.
one another,
Mhm.
from the child in elementary school to our aged elders.
Mhm.
We all require that collective support.
Mhm.
And so the statement to the family that is shooting one another,
Mhm.
the family that is backstabbing and holding down one another, the statement to the family is that epoch also must come to an end immediately and non-apologetically, for much greater opportunities are right here in our very fingers
Mhm.
as we uplift the global African family.
Mhm.
That's the core message.
Wow. Thank you so much, Chief. What is happening on October 1? Just go over that for us now, please, so we can understand, leaving this discussion quite happy and pleased.
As it pertains to the 1st of October, that is the scheduled first payment of reparations.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the scheduled first payment of the parity value of 500 British
Mm-hmm.
pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then it will be from there onwards
Mm-hmm.
that we just engage in this race, and
Okay.
we build our economy, we build ourselves, we transform ourselves
Mm-hmm.
with this
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. It's not about receiving something to debase
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Because let us be clear about why we're receiving this reparations.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody that is watching this right now received a mark on their shoulder, or a mark on their hand, or a mark on their forehead by a slave master.
Mm-hmm.
No one listening to us now was branded and scarred.
Mm-hmm.
But our ancestors were branded.
Yeah.
Our ancestors were scarred.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that you carry from that legacy is a name. You see.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we receive our reparations, we must understand and appreciate
Mm-hmm.
that this is actually in recognition as a self-reparation, because we don't talk about anybody else giving us these provisions.
Mm-hmm.
This is in recognition of what our ancestors, first and foremost, went through.
Yes.
Because if you imagine that your life is difficult today, then just press the rewind button
Mm-hmm.
and see what our forefathers went through.
Mm-hmm.
And then una know what I go on.
We will know what to go on, Chief. We will know what to go on, what to go on.
Right.
Errol Grant is saying excellent message, and I'm saying the very same too. Excellent message. I am a part of a Facebook group, and a number of the persons in that group, all their intentions are to exchange their Lumi. When can they exchange it to their fiat currency? That's for another discussion, Chief, because can you believe we have really come to the end of our discussion? I really want to thank you wholeheartedly for saying yes at the last minute. I know that I'm going to be talking to you again. It may not be on air because there are some information that I want for myself that I need to talk with you off air to clear those up. I want to thank all the persons who have watched us, all the persons who have sent in questions, and the persons who are now reacting on Facebook. We want to thank everyone for joining us. And Chief Samako, we wish you nothing more than the very best. It is an
Thank you
interesting time,
very
and some
kindly.
people say it's an interesting time to be alive. I'm happy I was able to speak with you, and the conversation continues. Listen out, because I'm going to be talking with you, as I said, about some other issues that I need to clear up in my own head, in my own thoughts, in my own thinking. I thank you, sir. All the very best for the rest of the Friday evening, and you do
Thank you.
take care. Take care. All the
Blessings.
best.
Ancestral powers. Thank you.
Ancestral
Blessings to
powers.
you all.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thanks everyone who participated, all the persons who were talking back. Cynthia, Francis, I'm going to be talking with you, Cynthia. I'm going to send you a message in your inbox because we need to talk too. Thank everyone who joined us. Quite an interesting discussion. We come back next week, and next week we come back with another interesting program. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy your Friday evening. Enjoy your weekend. Take care, everyone. We come back next week, Friday. Bev Moonchild saying, all the very best. Ancestral blessings, ancestral guidance. Thank you, Julia.
Living in this world of inequality, yeah. Just make sure you keep your sanity.